And here we are live with the Free to Fly online conference and fashion show. My name is Patricia with a Y. I'm Director of Operations of the freebirdprojectshop.com, who is sponsoring this conference, which is all about empowerment and freedom and living the life that you dream of, pretty much, and exploring the beauty of freedom through the fabulous clothing that we have at thefreebirdshop.com. And today our guest here is Maureen Campbell, who is going to share some of her expertise. But before I bring Maureen on, I'd like you to introduce you. If you haven't been a part of this Free to Fly online conference and fashion show already, my beautiful host from BC, Sasha Brand.
Hello, everybody. It's Sasha here, and thank you so much for joining us. As always, super pleasure. And I am your social media mistress. I will be watching our YouTube channel, so if you have any questions, feedback, comments, I would love to hear from you. We'll also be on Twitter doing the same thing, and we are on Facebook, so just make sure to shoot me a line. I'm here and waiting.
And with that, now we will introduce our guest. And it looks like you guys are not seeing me. There we go. Now I am on the air. Hello, everybody. And our guest, as I said, is Maureen Campbell. And she's going to be here to share some of her wisdom and advice that she's gained through the years. And I will let her introduce herself. Here she is, Maureen Campbell.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maureen Campbell. I'm a writer, a teacher, and a trained researcher. And today I want to share with you what I like to call landing spaces. When people are coming out of abusive relationships, a lot of times it's a lot of flitting around trying to figure out, where do I categorize this thing? How do I come to terms with what I've just been through? And how do I find a sane, safe, and sustainable place in this relationship? And I think the bird motif is so fitting here, because how I came to notice this phenomenon was I was watching the posts and reading the posts of a recently freed free bird. And one day she was so down and angry and depressed and suicidal. And the next day she was embracing life, and I can do anything and everything. And and I really miss the person that I left. And I could feel her pain. It was so acute, this back and forth that she was going through. But it resonated with me because I had been through something very similar myself. Not at home, but at a job. So abusive relationships can take a variety of forms. Domestic violence is an absolutely horrible thing that we're dealing with here. But a lot of times we're also in other kinds of abusive relationships. So I really related to what she was saying. And I sat back and thought, there's something very important here. This is a very important, rich topic. And I think that I can mine this for the nuggets that are there and see if maybe I can go in there and look at it and come out with some insights that can help people. So the very first one is recognizing that this, I like to call it psychological concussion. You come out and you're angry and people have treated you in this horrible way, and you have all the emotions associated with that. But then you think, but that's not who I am. I don't want to be angry. I'm a loving person. So I'm not going to let that rule me. So I'm going to deny myself those feelings, and I'm going to be a woman of unconditional love. And I'm going to remember the good things and the tenderness and the togetherness. But then you start thinking, well, I'm not being very loyal to myself if I'm going to feel loving toward this person that did all this, and so you're back again to the other side. So my first point is recognizing that this is one of the effects of being in a traumatic relationship, that you're not going to be sure coming out of it, that it would be so much easier if relationships were 100% negative, so much easier to walk away from, but they never are that way. You know, we wouldn't have been involved with the person if it was 100% negative. So in recognizing that this is really a thing, this coming out and this chaos and this going back and forth from one extreme to the other, and that it is incredibly painful, and we can work that out, we can even that out, okay? The first thing to do is to understand that we're going to have a variety of emotions. And in denying those emotions, we're really putting off any kind of healing whatsoever. If you're coming out of an emotional, abusive relationship, physically abusive, any kind of abuse, you're going to have what we call negative feelings. Okay, but you're also going to have positive feelings because there's a lot of sentimentality there. Allowing the feelings is the key. Allowing, yes, I'm angry. Yes, I'm hurt. Yes, I'm in grief. I have regret. I really want revenge, you know? And I also remember the good times. So in allowing ourselves to have those feelings, then we stop that rubber banding back and forth, flitting here and there from one place to another, because we're saying, you know what? Emotions are not just positive. We have negative emotions. And a lot of times those negative emotions are trying to tell us something important. And you know, maybe it is in delving into this, we're going to make sure we don't get ourselves in a similar situation with a similar type of person again. We're going to be able to work this out so that at some point we're going to come out of this whole and happy. But we can't come out of anything whole and happy if we don't allow that full spectrum of feelings that we have, that we're absolutely entitled to. We often deny ourselves those feelings because we're listening to other people, okay? And we're not listening to our own personal voice, and we're not listening to what our emotions are trying to tell us. If you get hit by a truck and live to tell, nobody's going to expect you to just get up and walk away from that. You know, you're going to need some treatment. You're probably going to need some therapy, but nobody is going to expect you to just stand up, brush yourself off, and get back to life. But somehow when it involves emotions, we do expect that of each other. And, you know, even a lot of spiritual teachers and coaches will be like, oh, you know, I don't know about those negative feelings. We want to think positive. Well, we might want to think that, but if that's not what's happening, we have to acknowledge that. And sometimes in the acknowledgement of it, it really kind of lifts the heaviness of it. You know, when we validate these negative feelings are feelings I'm having, and these positive feelings that in a way I don't really feel I should have because it was an abusive relationship, you also have to allow yourself that because there was good there. So in recognizing that this is a thing and that you have this range of emotions and you're going to allow yourself is the beginning of getting on a more even keel. The second point is understanding the hooks of those negative relationships and those negative emotions. I have always said, gosh, I wish people wouldn't make it seem so pat. Just, you know, change your thoughts to change your life. Just change your thoughts. Well, if it were that easy, everybody would have done it. We would all be living in mansions. We would all be having Rolls Royces and all of that stuff that you can manifest. But the truth of the matter is, whenever we experience these kinds of feelings, chances are they are connected within us and related to other traumas we've had. You know, if you stop to look, a lot of relationships have similar threads in them. It might be a different scenario, a different person, but there are similar threads running through. This is another hugely important reason to acknowledge those feelings that you have, because there's no way you can ever explore it and get to the bottom of it unless you do that. So understanding these emotions are hooked inside me to other things. I will need to release that, but at least now in this second step, I understand why it's not just all that easy to let go. I understand why I can't just snap my fingers and I'm totally positive, full of love and embracing the world, okay? So we've recognized it's a problem. We've allowed ourselves to have these emotions, and we understand that those emotions aren't just free floating, that they have anchors into us with other traumas, other situations, probably other times we haven't allowed ourselves to feel our emotions, and therefore those feelings from other situations are unresolved. The third point is, when we're in this flitting around and not being able to find this landing space, we can fly too high and dive too low, and that's where the pain comes in. You know, when I read this woman's posts and she was suicidal, shows how low you can go with those emotions and how painful it can be to be experiencing that negativity over again. But when you are in that low place also, your anger might make you feel empowered, energized a little bit, but you're not probably in that place going to take any steps you need to get more back to a middle ground. When you're flying too high, research in positive psychology has actually shown that we can make some seriously bad decisions when we're overly optimistic. And some of those might be going back to the situation that you just got out of. You know, cutting people way too much slack, much more slack than they deserve. Forgiving too soon when you haven't even had the chance to process this. So that's why we want to come to this even keel. First of all, because it's too painful to be going back and forth like that. And secondly, we want to have the courage to make good decisions, but we don't want to make bad decisions in a falsely optimistic place. Our fourth point is we need to give up on the either or, okay? And we need to embrace the both and. As human beings, and this is, you know, as we become more self-aware, which this is nothing but delving into your own self-awareness, becoming aware of that and listening to your own inner voice. When we get rid of either or, which really is, they're what I call, and a lot of people call, false dichotomies. You know, we don't have to pick either or. Either I'm angry, depressed, and suicidal, or I'm loving and tender and embracing the world. It can be both. So when you become more self-aware, you realize we do a lot of balancing acts. We balance our outer self with our inner self. We balance our spiritual self with our human self. We balance nature with nurture. We balance darkness with light. It can be both. We don't have to decide positive or negative. and in a lot of ways negative, it's used the wrong way. For example, let me give you an example. If my inner voice tells me, red alert, Maureen, that person is a slime ball, is that not more positive than overriding that with, no, I don't want to think negative, I want to think positive? So I jump in with both feet with a person that my inner voice, my intuition, and my gut just said, stay away from that person. Regardless of how that person looks, your inner voice is going to tell you everything you need to know. So if we go by this, I have to always be positive, I have to always be loving, I can't entertain any of that other, we deny ourselves a whole part of our lives that can really help us succeed, move on, heal. And it's those guides, rather than saying positive, negative, how about guides? How about our emotions are our guides? Those negative emotions take us to places that we need to explore. Now, none of this needs to happen right now. Finding a landing place is the first step. That's why I recognized it's part of the process, but it's a hugely important part of the process, because if we don't allow ourselves, if we don't honor that person we are going to have a harder time and a longer time. So if we can hit that middle ground very, very soon after getting out of that relationship, and we can say, yes, there was some good there, but the bad outweighed the good. There was not enough good to redeem this situation so that I could stay in it. That doesn't mean I don't love this person or didn't love this person on some level. Another dichotomy we have is the individual and the collective. We say we want to be unconditionally loving people, but being an unconditionally loving person doesn't mean you have to hang out with people. It means we are all human. We understand we're connected at the spiritual level, and the more good and the more love and the more positivity I can put into that collective pool, the more that is going to raise everybody up. But that doesn't mean the person's going to stay overnight at my house. So there are so many different subtle understandings here that if you can start to embrace those things, it's like, I don't have to be angry, but I also don't have to embrace this person. I can do both. I can work this out to where I've landed, and I know how to think about this relationship, and I know how to allow that relationship to help me learn more about myself. And then finally, we give up on all of those ideas that have been put into us through social conditioning, through our well-meaning friends, through Facebook memes, and we start owning who we are. We start loving who we are. We start making what we feel and think count. And when that happens, the next time there's a trauma, we're not put in such a situation of chaos. Do you have any questions, Patricia?
No, I am just enjoying the information that you are delivering. I mean, and it is so true. And it is, again, resonating with what we shared earlier this morning with Nancy, where the first step in her process of the overwhelming getting over burnout was recognized. And your first step was recognized. And I just love those moments when the information is so building on each other. It's just awesome. But no, I really love what you are saying, especially when it comes to again, the recognition and that awareness, and that being the beginning of as that goes. Now, Sasha, do we have any from you or the audience there?
Well, we definitely have some great viewership, and I keep hoping we're going to get some awesome questions or feedback. But I actually had something I wanted to comment on, because I might be social mediaing my little bum off, but I listen quite intently. And one thing I've noticed about the way that you're looking at it is it's rather a holistic approach. You're not focusing just on the negative, just on the positive. You're very much saying, okay, we have to acknowledge both sides. And I think that's maybe something that we don't hear enough as a domestic survivor, is that, you know, there are both sides. You do have to understand that, yes, there were good times. And there's nothing wrong with the fact that there were good times. But that doesn't change the fact that the bad does outweigh the good. So I really found a lot of value in it. Now, especially for those out there that are kind of still struggling to find that peace. I mean, this is something that you kept mentioning was after they've escaped their situation. What about someone who's currently in it or looking to escape from the situation? How can they start to embody what you're saying is the next process?
I would say if they're still in it, and you know, there are some subtle difficulties here, and usually when somebody is talking about a topic, there are always people who are in different situations that make it harder. One would be when you're still in it, you can definitely start the process. So I'll talk about that one first. When you're still in it, you can still become self-aware. Now, I do realize that there's a range in severity in domestic violence, and that some people are in absolute acute danger. And so if I were in that situation, I don't think I'd want to let my exploration into self-awareness be known. But just like secretly squirreling away money, you can secretly start realizing these things. For example, if someone's still there, they may not have really considered the whole good-bad ratio. And, you know, if I'm looking at my relationship now and I'm seeing that there's this good and there's this bad, and the bad's outweighing the good, and hey, you know what, that's the way it's been for years, I need to start making a decision. But the other part of that also that fits into whether you're there or gone, there's this thing in psychology called internal and external locus of control. And what that is how are you mostly controlled? If you have a heavy internal locus of control, that means you understand you have personal agency over your decisions, over what you can do, over your power to make something happen in the world. If you have a heavily external locus of control, that means you feel like you don't have any control. Every single thing that's happening to you is happening as the result of external forces. Okay, this can be good and bad. The experts say a good balance of internal and external control with a little heavier on the internal is what really is ideal. And this is why. A lot of abuse victims blame themselves. You know, they take it all way, way too internal. So that's another balancing act we do, the internal and the external. They take it way too internally when indeed they can't control everything that's going on. You know, they can't take responsibility for how someone else is. You know, and I do realize over time, little by little, what happens is they start blaming themselves and start feeling like, I'm the cause of this, if I just love this person more, whatever. You have to arrive at a point where you can only control that which you can control. It is not anybody else's responsibility what someone else does, how they do it. You know, this person who's being abused is not bringing that abuse on. That involves the decisions of another person. So we can get caught up there too. So when you're still in it, it's like realizing, what can I do and what do I not have control over here? And so getting any responsibility you feel for how another person acts and conducts themselves, to me, seems like a great first step if you're still there.
Absolutely. That's an excellent answer. And I wanted to also add that when it does come to people that are still in there, that one of the best things that you can sort of do, but one of the best things that you can pick up as a practice is journaling. That will really help with the self-awareness. Now, again, if you are in more of a dangerous situation where those have to be hidden, you can't have it, in a public place, then do take the security measures. But if you can find a way to keep a journal, then that will help to begin that process of self-awareness, and also to, again, reach out to those domestic violence shelters and those support groups within your community. And now that you found us, we do have a Freebird secret group that you can apply to Carol and get into if you are in that situation and you need extra support and help and can't find it where you are. We will definitely try and connect you with support in that area. Because while we are about the clothes and the fashion, we're also about helping. And so do make sure that you connect with Carol, and she'll get you connected to that secret group if you need that support and assistance.
Mm-hmm. I would also say, self-awareness is what this is all about. Getting to that point where a lot of times we are so loyal to everybody else in our lives except ourselves. We are not loyal to ourselves. We just put ourselves under that bus first thing. And so what I'm about is self-awareness and listening to that inner voice. Because if you're listening to that inner voice, it's never going to steer you wrong. And the more you trust it, the stronger it'll get. But if everybody thinks back, everybody can come up with a time when my intuition was panging and I ignored it, I second-guessed it, or a time when it panged and you listened and you were so glad you did. But even research shows the inner voice is not going to lead you astray. That gut is so vitally important. And I'm all about authenticity, okay? So what is more at the root of authenticity than listening to that inner voice? Than that universe coming through you and giving you that message when you need it. But we have to get on a whole other plane of awareness to do that. We have to delve into ourselves. We have to not be afraid to do that. I think a lot of times we are afraid of our feelings. We're afraid of those feelings. I mean, how many times have people been angry and they just really want revenge, okay? I would love to see this person, blah, 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 whatever, fill in the blank. But, of course, it's not functional or adaptive to do anything about it. But what we have to realize is, how do we act when we've experienced that incredible loss of personal power that comes with an abusive relationship? Either loss of all power completely, money, freedom, or just the loss of personal power, because even if we're the ones to leave the relationship, we still feel rejected. Because in a lot of ways, we were rejected. What we brought to the table was rejected. And so when you're rejected, you view this other person as all powerful, and you yourself feel no power at all. So finding that personal power by way of being loyal to yourself, allowing yourself to have those feelings that are coming in, and then beginning to have that exploration, that's what gives you your power back. And then you're not likely to lose it again if you really think, you know what, I'm really going to make the fact that this relationship happened to me work for me. I didn't do anything to cause this. I'm not responsible for anybody else's actions, but by golly, I'm going to make it work for me. And I'm going to get to know myself. I'm going to love myself. And I'm going to delve into myself more fully than I ever have before. And, you know, I was also thinking we have a lot of techniques we can use. You know, you have techniques you can use when you feel stressed out. But ultimately, what we want to do is not just have people coping. We want people to thrive, you know, to take those things off their list that are stressing them out, making them feel bad. And grounding is a really great way to do that. You know, and when you ground yourself, you're actually making yourself part of this earth. What I think is so relevant here is, you know, a lot of times we just kind of get in a meditative state, send those roots down through our feet. We visualize roots going to the center of the earth. But in this case, where you've come out of an abusive relationship, where somebody else has hurt you so badly, a lot of times you don't feel like this world is yours. You don't feel like you have a right to be here. And so in the grounding technique, I'd like to just briefly tell about, when you sit down to ground yourself, center yourself, you're going to send those roots down into the earth, and you're going to say, I have a right to be here. I have value. I am loved. I love myself. I make myself an important part of this earth. And then you're going to send some more tentacles up to the universe, up to that white light. And you're going to bring that cleansing light down into you. And at the same time, you're going to bring the energy up from the earth, form that ball of light and love within yourself. And then you're going to bring your power back. And how I do that myself is, it doesn't matter how self-aware you are. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. Life happens, okay? And we leave our power all over the place every day. We all do. That's why we have to do these things just like we shower. You know, we shower every day because we need to be clean every day. We get dirty. Well, our energy also gets dirty. We leave our power out there. And after you've come out of an abusive relationship and you learn these things, then you're so much more aware. I'm leaving my power out there. And how we do that is we let people get to us. If somebody treats us terribly, guess what we do? We just think about that and think about it and ruminate, and we kind of make ourselves a victim. Okay? Instead, it's like, you know what? That's how that person feels. You know, that person spoke to me the wrong way. That person did not treat me with respect, but that's not my problem. So therefore, you're not going to leave a piece of who you are with that person. You're going to, so every day when you ground and center, you're going to bring all that back. Where do you think you left some power? You know, did you leave it at work with some coworker that really annoyed you or ticked you off, or some kind of, somebody stole credit from you for something you did? You know, these things that really feel bad. But if we ruminate on them, guess what? A chunk of us is with that other person. And that's a chunk of us that we don't have to use to succeed, to prosper, and to heal. So during this grounding and centering, bring all that back into you. And then through that ball of love that you've created from the earth energy coming up, universal energy coming down, you can send that all through you, out through your energy body, and then out to all of those people who previously had your power. And now you're powerful. Okay, now you've found the landing place. Now the core, solid core of you is what's powerful. and it's right here, and it's solid. You know who you are. You know what you can control and what you can't control. You recognize that there are things like negative emotions, but you don't necessarily view them as negative. You view them as guides. And you allow them because it's part of you. It's part of your experience in life. You are open to what comes in. And then when you start allowing those emotions to start allowing yourself to feel is when you start feeling that inner voice. That's when you come across this guy or even this boss. You know, you go into an interview and for all intents and purposes, this just seems like an ideal situation, but there's something telling you that it's not quite right. That's what you listen to. And that's what allowing all this, that's what recognition starts to bring. That's what going in and exploring all these, how all these emotions are hooked into you. That's what that brings. That's how recognizing, how am I when I'm in this horribly bad mood? And how am I when I'm in this good mood? Am I too optimistic here? You know, could I get myself in trouble by being too optimistic, way too loving? Now, I'm going to say on certain levels, you can't be way too loving. I mean, you know, that's what it's about. But we also live human lives. And there are all kinds of things and people out there who don't really mean us well. And so we have that inner voice. We listen to it. You know, we ground center. We keep our power with us. And the likelihood of us getting into those bad situations is going to be far less. But having that landing space, if nothing else, just this first part, just this very first part of after you've gotten out of that trauma, or even when you're still in it, that very first part of recognizing and allowing is going to make that healing probably faster and a whole lot easier, because you're not doing that. You're not running into this wall, then running into that wall, or more accurately, being flung there and not being able to get your bearings.
And you know what? That's absolutely fantastic. And we actually had comments from one of our viewers, our very own Carol of our Freebirds Corporation. And she said that it was actually the process of gaining that self-awareness that helped her to transition from victim to survivor. She says she spent years looking for solutions outside of herself when it needed to start within her. So clearly what you're saying is definitely speaking to us and, you know, to our audience as well. And I think it's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think we have to also find that place between the conditioning we've had, the social conditioning we've had since we were little tiny babies, to really having the courage and the confidence to trust ourselves, you know, and to do what we need, and to not be so concerned about being good girls, complying, obeying. Obedience is not always a good thing. And the truth of the matter is there are all kinds of people out there who want our obedience, but they just really want control. Okay, so we have to decide how big of a role really as an adult does obedience play in our lives. If I do not feel a certain way, I have to be able to say that. I have to be able to express myself, you know, in a respectful way, but be true to myself. You know, self-loyalty is really a biggie.
Absolutely. That is a huge, huge factor, that self. And we were just, again, talking about this. It's amazing how the conversations flow into each other, because we were talking about self-love earlier, and that whole how we are kinder to our friends than we are to ourselves. And we would never talk to our friends in some of the ways that we talk to ourselves, and the ways that so in so many ways, apply the advice that you give to your best friend to you, and your path will be a whole lot smoother, listening to that inner intuition, because we get those gut feelings, and that is like your inner best friend. So yeah, honor it.
The best friend telling the best friend we're always so much better at that. We're always so much better at helping someone else because we see them with that compassion. And as you said, we need to see ourselves that way. And I have one more tie-in to a couple of the other presentations. And this is something I've always said, I'm a teacher of the personal development. At the same time, if you eat right and exercise, that is half of it, maybe 2/3 of it. Because when you talk about being flung from one extreme to the other, not eating right is like being on a roller coaster. And it's truly amazing. I'm not a registered dietitian. I had a little behavioral nutrition in school, but not enough to be an expert. But you know where my expertise lies? In when I have done right by myself with food and with exercise. It is absolutely amazing what issues just aren't even issues anymore. And when your blood sugar is regulated and it's even, you're more even. So even in everything I just said, sometimes if you just eat right and exercise, that's going to help you get that landing place, find that even place where you can rest, you can feel sane, you can feel safe, and it's sustainable. It's truly amazing to me how many issues just eating right and exercise take care of.
Absolutely. I mean, and there's also the whole water thing too. We know that we're supposed to drink enough water, and that can cure so many of the issues that we face on a daily basis. And you're right, eating right, add those blood sugar levels. I mean, I know that I experienced it as a parent. I have one particular child who would be cranky, and I would know that, okay, go have a snack, then we'll chill, because you can generally bring on your own temper tantrums by not making sure that you have enough protein. When you are crashing, you are not yourself. I mean, there is some truth to the Snickers. I mean, that you're not yourself when you're hungry, and it is so true. Because that really is not the healthiest choice for your body, but they are right about the fact that you do need to regulate your sugar levels. Just don't try the yummy route, the yummy route. Anyways, off to somebody else before I embarrass myself some more with that one.
And as you mentioned, the hydration, if you're not properly hydrated, you are very sluggish. And that's another thing I've noticed in myself, that when I'm hydrated, I'm perked up. It's like, oh, wow, there's a world out there. I'm feeling part of it. When you're not hydrated, and when you're not hydrated, you're not eating, you're not exercising, you're causing your body to have to work so hard, and when your body doesn't have to work as hard, it's almost like you freed yourself so that you can go out there and you can do the things you want. And you can feel the way you want to feel. It really is an amazing difference. And I'm such a total hypocrite because I'm not always in the zone, okay? But when I am, I feel so great, which makes me wonder why I go for the cupcakes. But,
Well, I think it's because they're tasty. Let's face it, the stuff that's not good for us really, really tastes good.
Yes, it does.
Not to mention, and gotta love these tie-ins, we actually did an Overcoming the Sugar Monster thing with Tanuja right at the beginning, and I can speak from experience on a big level. Sugar is a nasty little addiction. You reach for the cupcake because your brain says you need the cupcake. When I completely cut sugar out of my diet, I'm pretty sure that I lost my mind.
Mm-hmm. But don't you feel great though? And so
Absolutely.
everything fits together. You know, when, like you said, Sasha, my approach is holistic. Well, when you get really, really holistic, you realize it's everything you put in your body, not only food or drink, it's your exercise, it's what you're watching on TV, what you're listening to, who you're listening to. All of those things can cause terrible feelings within us. But as we get more self-aware, we understand, and then we can cut things out that are really taking us to a bad place. So.
And absolutely, and that goes back again to that awareness of being aware of which of those things in our lives are beneficial to us and which of those things that are just draining us and leaving us feeling like the pool of mess and hell that we find ourselves in. That tar, going back to that toxic abusive relationship, I mean, that ooey gooey icky tar, that keeps us, or gives us the illusion of keeping us trapped. Because of course, as we've been talking about through this whole conference, it begins. And with that thought, I think we're about ready to wrap it up, unless we have anything else there. Sasha, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, first and foremost, Rebecca wanted to thank us for doing this. I believe she's quite enjoying herself, and she said to us that holistic health is in and of itself a grounding experience. It's a return to more of a natural state of eating and living. So she definitely agrees with us, and I know that there's a lot of people. We had Connie on gluten-free. She would agree with us. I know that a lot of our members are part of Shankminds. Peter Shankman loves health, and really that's the way that our society is going, is a more holistic, natural approach. You know, the things that we put in our bodies do affect what we're going to do and how we're going to respond and how we're going to feel, but the thing is that sometimes it's really hard to see, because our society is set up the way that we work and the things that we eat and where we can buy them, and it is very calculated, but it's not always the best move. So it's really fantastic that you were able to join us today and help us kind of work through a more holistic approach to being able to find your own superpowers.
I have enjoyed it immensely. I have a website. It's called youincredibleyou.com. I'm actually switching over to a different website, but for anybody who wants to read blogs and stories about inner voice and all that stuff, I hope you go. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for sharing your expertise on finding your superpower. And just one thing before we go, I wanted to say that in so many ways, none of us are perfect at doing the eating, the exercising, and everything right. And that's why, again, going back to what Maureen said earlier, that it is a daily practice, like showering. And there are going to be some days that you wake up and you say, nah, not today. And that's okay too. Just keep on picking yourself up, and it comes with practice. So don't give up on yourself just because you're not doing it perfectly. Nobody does it perfectly. We're all hypocrites. And with that, I'll allow Miss Sasha to sign us off.
Fantastic. So just a quick, actually, before we do that, Maureen, you've given us a website. Is there anywhere else that they can follow you, find you, or connect with you, just as a last-minute addition to our viewers?
I have a Facebook page, youincredibleyou.com, or youincredibleyou Facebook page.
Perfect. All right. Wonderful. So make sure to connect with Maureen. Maureen, thank you so much. I think this has been absolutely fantastic. You are an amazing speaker. And for our part, definitely check us out online so you can see beautiful fashions like what I'm wearing and what our lovely Patricia is wearing. So you can find those online. It's the freebirdprojectshop.com. And of course, all of this is sponsored, and it's all done together by the Freebird Project, which is going towards helping domestic violence survivors. So the Free to Fly conference will continue right until almost the end of November. And I, as always, will be watching all sorts of stuff in the social media. So please hit me up, tweet me, chat me, whatever you need. And we very much look forward to seeing you all again soon. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.